we're going to talk UFOs. Third hour, we're going to talk about Bigfoot and cryptids in the Cascades. And I'm covering the Cascades because I have reports that range from Glacier, Washington, Darrington, Concrete, and other areas. So we're just going to cover the Cascades on the northern side. And I know you've got stories, Michael.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So while I'm trying to get our guest in, could you go ahead and tell us a little bit about the Pleiades? And I believe you took your team up on the Pleiades mountain range, did you not?
Yeah. If people don't really understand what you're talking about, the Pleiades is a group of peaks up north central Washington State by Mount Baker, actually, very close to the Canadian border. And it's kind of like fortuitous and interesting that there's a mountain up there called the Pleiades, because when you go up towards Mount Baker, there is a very famous lookout area called Artist Point. It's basically the farthest part you can get to on Highway 542 as you're heading east from Bellingham, Washington. You just keep going until the road ends, and all of a sudden you're up in the foothills, the very high peaks of Mount Baker, and you get to look north to the Canadian border and see these mountains called the Pleiades. But also at night, you'll see the real Pleiades star system shining bright, very brightly, right over the top of them as well. And that is some strange activity and anomalous craft and lights that are seen up there many, many times, where the UFO I-Team has pretty much made an annual safari investigation up to a little town of Glacier, Washington, where we kind of have our gathering spot, and then make the trip up there for sky watching, UFOs, and very interesting situations that people have reported up there. I'll just report on a couple of them that we have run across during our investigations up there with the UFO I-Team, just to kind of get the people up to speed on what's going on. One of the first things that drew us to this area of Mount Baker was a really amazing report from a biker, a Harley-Davidson biker guy, who was basically living up in this small mountain community called Glacier. And he was coming home late at night, about midnight, I believe he said, going into the small town of Glacier on Highway 542. And as he's going down the road on his bike, he says over the top of his head, coming from behind him, all of a sudden, about treetop level, he says, there's this massive, glowing orange and yellow pyramid shape, flying object that is lighting up the road in the middle of the night just by its luminosity. And the thing travels out in front of him over the highway and goes ahead of him just about 100 feet or so, and then takes a sharp left, this object, and starts hovering over the Nooksack River, which is just paralleling the highway at that point. Nooksack River is quite a large rushing river, and this massive, he said it was probably maybe 30 feet at the base of this triangle pyramid shape, and it was hovering over the river. He stopped his bike and got off and just was watching dumbfounded as this silent object was just hovering low over the river when it basically let down three glowing tentacles, he calls them, into the river, and started what he was noticing, slurping water out of the river into the craft. Now he's looking around trying to find someone that can witness this with him, because he's alone on his bike. There are no houses around. There's no people, no traffic coming by at all, which is typical, in those kinds of sighting situations. And he can't find anyone to witness this with him, so he's just intent in getting all the details he possibly can in this sighting. He doesn't know how long it's going to last. He says after about 3 or so minutes, the tentacles stopped slurping the water, and they were pulled into the bottom, the flat bottom of this pyramid-shaped glowing object. And then the object started just gliding slowly away down the river, away from the biker on the side of the bank. When at one point he says that it wasn't very long, and all of a sudden 2 Black Hawk-style helicopters, military helicopters, come screaming up the river towards this object. And when the Black Hawk helicopters came into view of the witness, the pyramid-shaped object just zipped off as quickly. He couldn't even believe how fast this thing went. He says that from his position, he saw it disappear behind Mount Baker, which he calculated at that point from that, and we've investigated to determine how far away he was from this Mount Baker area. He says the object disappeared basically a 10-mile stretch from that point in the river to the behind the mountain in like 2 seconds. That's how fast this thing was traveling. And, of course, the helicopters had no chance of even catching this thing, but they kept on going down the river, chasing it anyway.
And so this was pyramid-shaped?
This was pyramid-shaped, but not a 4-sided pyramid. It was only a 3-sided, triangular kind of pyramid, which was very unique. If someone's going to make this story up, you would think, they'd come up with something like a normal 4-sided pyramid, but it wasn't. Very distinct and unique. And it was glowing orange, had these tentacles that seemed to kind of be very flexible and coming out of the bottom of the craft. Matter of fact, we had our forensic sketch artist, Brian Snowdy, come along with us on our last investigation to interview this witness and to actually create a drawing, a painting actually, of the craft from the description that the witness gave. And the witness said this is exactly what he saw. He even had, in the painting, he had the river in the background, the trees, and the stars in the sky. It was quite a painting, which you can find on the UFO I-Team Facebook page if you want to take a look at that as well. You've got to scroll down quite a ways to find it, but it's there. And that was one of the things that brought us to the Mount Baker area, hearing that story and then going up and investigating it.
Michael?
Yes, Cole.
When was your last interview with that gentleman?
Okay, that would have been last July.
Okay.
This last summer. And I know the gentleman real well. He's very believable and doesn't want any notoriety at all. That's why I'm not using his name or trying to describe him in very detail. But it took us probably 2 different summers to go up there and befriend the guy and let him know that we weren't there just to take advantage of his story, but we just wanted to hear the details. So
Do you remember what year the sighting was?
Off the top of my head, I don't remember the exact year, but I know it was within 5 years ago. Let's put it that way. And I definitely have to go in and get the details again this next summer to try to see if we can pinpoint the exact date, if possible. It was in the summertime. It was warm enough that, he was out in the weather, or in the nice summer weather at midnight.
Okay, so
Okay.
Jamie, are you with us tonight?
I am.
Excellent. So, for this is Jamie's first time actually on S4. She's actually my neighbor across the field. Been living up here in Concrete. How many generations now?
Third.
Third generation. So when it comes to the history and some of the hot spots in the Cascades and the Upriver community, she would be the go-to.
Wonderful.
Well, now, right here on Haystack, there's a light that bounces up and down above the road every July and August.
And we need to get UFOI team up here to work with FMP on identifying that and seeing what's going on. Because, you know, and I love having you on the show because I can tell you right now, just hiking up Haystack, I just, it's, yeah, and coming from my perspective, I want to get EMF reading. There's a whole lot I want to do on this mountain just because you have the feel of being watched. You have a whole
Absolutely.
you have a whole lot of different activity. But on that note, you know, the history of Haystack specifically, I mean, it used to be a road that went all the way to Darrington. And didn't it go across Concrete Sauk Valley Road and was actually a ferry that went across the river?
Yes, there was, before the bridge was built.
Right. So that's, you know, that's a lot of traffic and that's a lot of history as far as, you know, people getting in wrecks, people dying, spirits that could be stuck there, things of that nature.
Yeah, there's quite a few deaths on Sauk Valley Road, as a matter of fact. Up towards Finney Creek.
Yeah. And, you know, then you bring in the Bigfoot. I mean, there's tons of Bigfoot activity and reports just on Upper Finney alone, let alone South Skagit Highway.
Yeah, Upper Finney, depending on how far you go up, if you go up towards, like, G Lake up at the top, it gets really spooky there at night.
Which one?
Up by G Lake, up there, it's like midway between here and I'd say it's up past Finney. It's up higher than Finney. Like, I think it's double. Yeah.
G Point.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Now my uncle goes up there and has a hunting party every hunting season. So I've been up there, and it's, yeah, I agree with you.
No,
So-
if you want to go see something spooky, go up the Sauk Swaddle. If you go up towards Buck Creek up there on the Swaddle, there's a Indian cemetery up there, and that place is the spookiest place by far that I have ever been. You can hear like a heartbeat or a drum beat or something. You don't hear birds chirping. You can't hear any noise. You don't hear water from any of the creeks or anything. It's just this really heavy silence, except for that beating. And I don't know what that beating sound is, but it is scary up there.
I've heard multiple reports of that from the Darrington community, from various people. Cause we did do a Forest Moon Paranormal, basically a paranormal discussion in Darrington one time. Never got back there to carry on because we were going to do a monthly discussion there, but did one and didn't make it back. So yeah, there's a lot of activity in Darrington. There's a lot of UFO activity on Whitehorse, and just the Mountain Loop Pass alone brings a whole lot of reports.
Yes.
Now, Michael, have you guys ever gone Mountain Loop Highway at all?
Funny you should ask. This is very interesting that you sign a synchronicity that you actually brought that up, because I was about ready when you guys were talking a little earlier. It just piqued my memory. This was about, you know, Washington Pass, right? Going up over Highway 2.
Okay.
Is that the North Cascade route.
That goes through Index and Gold Bar, correct?
Yeah.